Good afternoon. This is Attorney Angel Lugo. I am here live on Wednesday afternoon. We are going to talk about domestic violence in Connecticut. What is the law? Quick disclaimer, I'm not giving specific legal advice, just general legal information. So let's talk about domestic violence. First and foremost, don't do it. But in these times of the pandemic, I realized that with people being home and not being able to venture out, there's more and more a rise in what we call domestic violence. Domestic violence is a category of law where it's either through blood or relationships. So what do I mean by that? A fight between your mother and a son, daughter and a father, siblings, aunts, uncles, anything by blood. If you're related to someone by blood and you get into some type of dispute with them, then that's what we call domestic violence. Or if you are married or cohabit or had a dating relationship. It runs the whole gamut. It could be same sex, relationships, male to male, female to female. It doesn't matter. So why is that important? Well, in Connecticut, rightly so, there's laws that protect the alleged victim and prosecute a person who is charged with domestic violence. Now, it could mean something as simple as an argument where the police are called, to a serious attack where someone ends up in the hospital, even to death. I think there was one in the news where the son just killed his mother. That would be considered domestic violence case. Now, the thing with domestic violence law in Connecticut is that there's 23 different courts. They all do it differently. They have different programs for people that are accused of domestic violence. And why is that? Well, the law recognizes that, siblings and people get, you get into fights sometimes with those you love. So what happens? Here's the scenario. You're in an argument with a loved one. The cops are called. Either they arrest you on the spot, or they issue a warrant for you. Then you're presented to court, usually within 48 hours. Even with the pandemic, they are doing court dates immediately. And what happens is that family relations, there's a whole unit called family relations in the court, and they interview both parties, the person who got arrested and the alleged victim. Sometimes both people get arrested, so they interview both parties. The important thing with that is that anything you tell them, they will literally put on that report. So be very careful if you've been accused of domestic violence crime when you go and talk to family relations. Remember that they are not your ally. They are not there to help you. So it's always best to have an attorney with you. And once you tell them something, they'll put that into their recommendations for what is most important to a person is what's called a protective order. Now, there's three types of protective orders. There's a full protective order, there's a partial protective order, and there's a residential stay-at-home protective order. Why is that important? Well, if you get a full protective order and let's say, for example, your wife, you can no longer return to that house or contact her through telephone, text, social media. And then if you have kids together, you can't. Sometimes you can't contact the children as well. Now, and that's for the remainder of the case, and that's till the case ends. And cases just don't end overnight. Sometimes they take months. With COVID, they might take years. Courts aren't officially open, and that's very important. What kind of protective order you're gonna get? There's three categories, like I said, from severity of being a full protective order all the way down to the simplest protective order, which is the no threats, no violence, allows you to live at home, interact with kids. If you have them, contact that person. So that's the one you're shooting for. Very few people who aren't represented by attorneys do not know this, but on that court date, on your arraignment, when you're about to get issued that protective order, you can ask for a full hearing on why the court should impose that protective order. It's called the Garcia hearing, and it's got to be scheduled within 2 weeks of your arraignment. And I would, obviously you would want an attorney at this point, but that's a very important tool because that puts the burden on the state's attorney to show through evidence like a mini trial why you can't be around that person. If you have pending domestic criminal charges, well, it can affect you collaterally with any type of employment that you're seeking. If you have any type of license to carry firearms, it could affect you. If you're a police officer, security guard, in some type of profession where you need a concealed carry permit, it's going to affect you. If you're a professional, it's going to affect you. It's going to affect you in many different ways. Now, there's also another type of order, but it's not done through the criminal courts. It's called what we normally see in movies or on TV called the restraining order. But that is a civil process. The difference between a civil restraining order and a criminal protective order is that the criminal protective order happens when you get arrested or a person gets arrested. It's imposed by the judge. A civil restraining order, anybody can apply to that for an order by going to family court, swearing in a sworn affidavit that they're in fear of somebody, either an ex-boyfriend and an ex-spouse, any person that is, either related by blood or relationship, because you feel that they are an immediate threat to your health and safety. Now that is started by a person and not by the police. So it's different because one's in civil family court and the criminal protective order is in criminal court. But both are essentially, if you break or violate any of those, either two, the penalties can be severe. I think it's a Class D felony, meaning up to 5 years imprisonment. So what's available as far as programs if you are accused of violating or a criminal domestic case? Well, we have what's called the Family Violence Education Program. Plain and simple, it just means classes. There's different programs, but I think the standard one has 9 classes. There's a more intense one called the 26-week Explorer program, 26 weeks being half a year. So picture classes once a week for the next 6 months. If the court does grant, only certain charges qualify for the Family Violence Education Program. And if you qualify for that program and you complete the program, well, the charges are dismissed from your record. That's very good because you do not want, in this day and age with background checks, you do not want to have any type of domestic violence related, thing popping up in your background. So domestic violence, taken very seriously. Some of the myths that exist out there are that Connecticut, if the police are called, then they have to make an arrest. That is a myth. That is totally discretionary up to the police officer involved. So don't think just because the police are called that you will get arrested. Also, domestic violence a lot of time pops up when people are fighting custody issues in civil court. They try to attack the person, what we call a collateral attack, through criminal charges. So that's something to be aware of. And now what also happens is with technology, if the court believes that you're too much of a threat not to go unsupervised, but they don't want to throw you in jail, they'll put a GPS on you, an ankle monitor, and that's a pain in of itself because you got to carry a cell phone on you. You're gonna have an electronic monitoring device. It's a pain to charge. It's like 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night. And then they'll give you a zone that if you go within that zone, usually the zone where the person either lives or works, and if you go in within that zone, it will start beeping, and then you'll get a call and saying you're violating the terms of your release. You have to come back to court, and the judge could throw you in jail. So that's something to be aware of with the courts being closed. I have seen some people that have had GPS devices for more than a year, waiting for their case to get resolved. As a lawyer, if you represent somebody, you have the ability to try to modify any type of protective order or GPS device, but it all depends, obviously, on the specifics of the case. And if you are accused of violating a protective order, it's very easy to prove that you violated that order. All the state's attorney has to prove is that there was a protective order or a restraining order against you, and that you violated that order. So, what if you're walking down the street and you see that person walking the opposite way? Well, my advice to you would be run the other way, because the defense of "I didn't know she was there" doesn't go too far. There are cases where it's a public place, let's say a court or a hospital or something like that. Well, obviously, you might run into that person there, but if you run into her by accident at your favorite restaurant, then that's something that probably will not be so good of a defense. So they are domestic when they say you're accused of a domestic violence crime. They don't just mean there's one crime called domestic. It could be a breach of peace. It could be a disorderly conduct. It could be threatening. It could be something you post on Facebook or Instagram, or it could be anything that person perceives. And with social media today, you could say something on Twitter to an ex, or you can say something to her friend, and then her friend tells her. So be very aware of what you post on social media, because with the culture these days, it's easy to get charged with some type of domestic charge. Now, not advocating for domestics or anything, but just be aware of what your rights are. So every court in Connecticut has some type of domestic, either core or what we call the docket. Hartford has their own domestic court, but some courts just have it on specific days, specific hours. Some courts make you do different types of programs depending on what's in the area. There's programs called Evolve, the Wheeler program, the 26-week Explorer. There's a host, a plethora, what we would say, of crimes. And here's the other issue with Latinos, Hispanic communities here in Connecticut. They usually live in generalized specific areas. Hartford, it's the South End. New Haven, it's Grand Avenue. So if you are excluded or you get accused of a domestic and you can't go a mile or two from that person's house, that might be your whole world, because that's all you know. That's where you live. So that's very important to know. And also, if you live in housing, apartments, the walls are thin. An argument that in the suburbs no one would know because the houses are far apart. Well, in an inner city type of environment or city type of environment, you could have the neighbor calling the police just because it's heated enough. And You know, Latinos, we as a people, we talk loud. We like to, sometimes we get a little boisterous and a little loud, and that could be perceived as people arguing. Sometimes when we talk, we like to express ourselves. We use our hands. So just be cognizant of that. That maybe it won't be interpreted how you thought it would be interpreted, and you could have the police called on you. It's very important to know your rights. This was a very brief outline of domestic violence law in Connecticut. If you have any questions, please send me a message or contact me at 860-987-3090. This is Attorney Lugo signing off. Thank you.